You are listening to the Postcast presented by the Locked On Senators podcast and the Glebe Central Pub. The Glebe Central Pub is your neighborhood pub in the heart of the Glebe. Join them for great food, tasty drinks, and a great atmosphere. Follow them online too. You can find out when they have events like open mic, like what else they got there? Trivia night. Nothing wrong with that. Wing night. How about that? Some nice cheap wings going on. Guinness on Friday, $7.75. All that's at the Glebe Central Pub. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Jack Richardson for our first postcast in 2 weeks. It's a 6-3 loss to the Edmonton Oilers. An Oilers team that played and, well, they looked well rested. They jumped out of the gate smoking hot, but this loss all came down to the third period. Jack, what was your emotion throughout this one, culminating in an unfortunate injury to Anton Forsberg?
You know what? I was pretty impressed. I think their first two periods were good, considering they were off for 12 days. The Oilers were hot. They'd already played 2 games this week. This was a scheduled loss. I think the third period was a little disheartening, just because if they could have strung what they did in the first 2 periods together a little bit more in the third, just kind of lock it down, it would have been better. But Edmonton took over and they were the better team.
They were certainly the better team. And I was going to allow them to be the better team in the first period. I was going to have nothing harsh to say about an opening frame. And yeah, they got outshot. Yeah, McDavid scores a couple minutes in. Nice little ricochet bounce play from behind the goal line. You're going to give him his cookies. Ends up with a goal and 2 assists, though, in this one. But the Senators, they played from behind for almost the entirety of the game, but kept finding ways to battle back, most notably from down 3-1 to tie game in a matter of minutes. Claude Giroux extends his goal streak to 5 games. Eric Brandstrom gets his first goal in 121 games, and Jake Sanderson opened the scoring for Ottawa just 21 seconds into the second period, but unfortunately, he too left this game, did not return. Jack, you were mentioning to me when we logged in, you didn't see a particular play where it's obvious that he's injured, but there might have been a hit around the Oilers bench. What did you see when it came down to Sanderson?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Every time Sanderson's on the ice, I'm glued to him, right? I think a lot of us are now these days. But I noticed, especially in the first couple periods, McDavid was taking runs at him a lot too, and just finishing hits. And not that any of them were dirty. I don't think he got hit in questionable areas at all. But man, you get hit 6, 7, 8 times a night, you're gonna feel a toll. I think there was one right near the Oilers bench where he got hit, and it looked like it might have been a back thing. So that was and I don't know if I saw him after that, and then we realized he was out for the game. So that's my theory. It might be a back thing, might have just been cautionary to hold him out. I'm not really sure though. What about you? What did you think?
No, I didn't see anything in particular. I was kind of just upset when you hear the Oilers broadcast, which we got here on Sportsnet now, where they just say he's not on the bench, and then you start tracking and he didn't come back. So Jake Sanderson gets on the scoreboard and then leaves the game. He finishes with just under 1930 played in this one. 2 block shots, but 2 giveaways. What went wrong for you in the third period? Because there were a couple, it felt like bang plays. They lose a puck board battle in the offensive zone. Next thing you know, it's in the back of your net. Was that just I don't want to call it unlucky, because clearly the Oilers were the better team here. But what did you see on the Puljujarvi goal? We'll start with that, which ends up being the game winner.
Well, I honestly thought that was going to be an offside, and I thought they were going to challenge for it. But the Sens are, they're good at their offside challenges. So when they didn't even take a second look at it, I was like, okay, it was good. But it's honestly one that you want Forsberg to have a little bit, but it's also like a perfectly placed shot at the same time, right? Like posting in for a goalie is a tough one to stop. And I didn't think that. I think at the beginning of the third, and you mentioned the Oilers broadcast, they kind of mentioned that it was a tame start to the period, considering with the second period that we saw. So I wasn't upset. Now, the 4-3, I'm expecting the Sens to push a little bit, right? And a shorthanded goal as the dagger to make it 5-3 was the worst case scenario, obviously. And I mean, we talked about Sanderson. He was having a great game. He had the goal. He played 19 minutes before he left with the injury. I feel like every time Jake Sanderson has a great game, it's met with Thomas Chabot not having a good game. And that's a trend now, and it was a bad night for him. He's had a lot of bad nights, though, and that's my problem. So the biggest thing to me before the Forsberg injury was Chabot, because that Derek Ryan goal to make it 5-3 was on him, and he didn't pick up his guy in front of the net. He got worked by McDavid in the second period, and I'm not even mad about losing the puck to McDavid. It's what happened after. And then I think there was another one before that. I think he was a little bit puck watching on McDavid's first goal there. So biggest standout to me was Shabbat, and then obviously I think the injury kind of not overshadowed all that, but it kind of took the headline away from a -4 night for Thomas Shabbat.
Yeah, the Anton Forsberg injury also took away from any emotion in the final 5 minutes of this game. It was a sleepwalk, fluff the pillows, cradle at home, nothing going on. And rightfully so. He looked like he was in so much pain after that play. Let's get into it. It's a bang bang. Pass goes in front. We see this play plenty of times on a power play, especially one that has Zach Hyman, who's got a nose for the net. He's jamming away. You think it's on him to get out of the way? I know Travis Hamonic got some two hands on him and kind of let him in. And ultimately, that's what the NHL found, is the challenge was unsuccessful for goaltender interference.
Yeah, what I don't like is if people are basing, the injury or the result of the goalie interference challenge being like, oh, it must not have been Hyman's fault then, because we all know that the goalie interference review process is an absolute gong show. So my problem is obviously Hamonic bumps him, and that's why he ends up falling on Forsberg. I have two problems with it with Hyman, though. The first one is he ends up in the blue paint on his own. And look, Ross, we watch Brady Tkachuk every single game. He's in and around the net his entire career. I can't think off the top of my head an instance where he's gotten a goalie interference penalty, because he does it properly. Maybe once, maybe twice. He's there all the time. I'm going back to the Oilers broadcast. In the middle of the game, they put out a nugget. Hyman's had 5 disallowed goals this season alone for goalie interference. That's not a trend. That's or a coincidence. That's a trend, and it's a guy who goes to the blue paint. And I think it's frustrating for me because we're watching Tkachuk do it the proper way, right? You're in the blue paint, or you're in and around it, but you're not in the crease. There's a huge difference, and I think that Hyman just kind of bulldozed his way in, which is okay, but there was no effort to get out of there, which is why he got bumped into Forsberg, and it creates a terrible injury.
Yeah, really unfortunate. I mean, I can't remember the last time I've seen a goalie have to have his pads taken off to go on a stretcher, right? Like, you never want to see the stretcher. I think that goes without saying, but it seems like usually it's for like head injuries or neck injuries. The fact you could just tell he's in so much pain, it's a lower body thing. I'm not a doctor like that, to be clear, but from where he was kind of grabbing, Dom Nicoletta was out there as well. It just,
well,
hate to see it.
And it looked like it was when he was kind of in the butterfly, like his right leg was down already.
Yeah.
And it looked like Hyman fell on the thigh area. So you're talking like maybe groin or like quad. Like, it's just
Not good.
Worst case. I mean, honestly, if you're thinking long-term for Forsberg, I would imagine, I mean, it sounds bad, but you'd almost rather a clean break on something like that instead of having it be a groin or, a hip flexor or whatever might be. But yeah, that's, it's unfortunate. It's just like he wasn't having a stellar game by any means, but he was a workhorse for them in that 4-game win streak. He won all 4 games. So seeing him go down, and now you've got Mads Sogard, who's barely played this year, as your number one, essentially. Like, it's just a terrible situation for the Sens in net.
This was Anton Forsberg's best stretch of games since the 4-game win streak at home right after the initial 2-game road trip to start the season. So we're talking mid-October. He finally got back to finding his game. And then it has to be an injury, which there's no update on officially. DJ Smith after the game, no update on Anton Forsberg or on Jake Sanderson, but time will tell. And I'm holding my breath hoping that they're both all right, but I don't know. I don't expect it to be very good news when you see the stretcher, but we're thinking of Anton Forsberg. Obviously overshadows a good effort, I want to say, but costly mistakes. And you singled out one particular player there in Thomas Chabot, where you're paying him to be the number one guy. He'll get a lot of the credit when the puck goes in. And I mean, ultimately you get a lot of the blame when you're the reason why the puck goes in your own net. And I looked up the numbers, and that Canadian division certainly did a toll on a lot of Senators players. But Thomas Chabot's now -14 in 15 career games against Edmonton. So you look at, he's matched up against McDavid. I'm sure there's lots of top defensemen around the league who have tough numbers when they're going to match up against him for that long. And the Oilers have owned Ottawa in Ottawa now too, 7-0-1 in their last 8 games in the nation's capital. But you hope that eventually these elite players can rise up and, bring the best out of each other. which we saw last year with Timmy, right? He's got a little extra pump with Draisaitl. He had that unreal OT game winner, but all in all, just not enough today for the Ottawa Senators against the Edmonton Oilers. And it's unfortunate they came in with such a tough opponent because it's not getting any easier, whether the opponent is or not, right? 11 straight games with a point for the Oilers. Like, I'm not making excuses for the Senators. Going into the third period tied at home, you hope, almost expect, if you're a good team, to get a point out of it. The Senators instead fold the tent, give up 3, gong show, deteriorated into a debacle, as we said on Twitter at Sen Central. But really, you got to bounce back now because these next couple of games, I mean, let's go here. Let's at least see them make a bit of a push, because Monday you've got the Flames, Tuesday at New York against the Islanders, and then back on Friday we are going to be boots on the ground at the Glebe Central Pub. The Glebe Central Pub, official sponsor of the Postcast. We're going to get to our Sen Central standouts coming up and a bit more analysis into what the heck do they do now. Cam Talbot still not ready to return. And now Anton Forsberg out for what could be the foreseeable future, if not longer. Jack, in the next 3 weeks, the Sens have 4 sets of back-to-backs. They were going to need 2 goalies anyways, and now they need to find one that can consistently play in the NHL. Mad Sogard, I'd imagine, gets first crack at that opportunity. But first, a word from our friends at the Glebe Central Pub. They're going to be hosting the Locked On Senators podcast on Friday, February 17th. We're going to have boots on the ground, boots on the bus. Bus leaves at 5 o'clock. Updated schedule. Bus leaves at 5 o'clock. The live show starts at 4, and we're going to be at the pub for 3 o'clock. You can join us whenever you can get there. I know 3 o'clock, strange, but the Senators personally reached out. They said, hey, the Chris Neil ceremony starts at 6. So we're not taking any risks. Initially, we were supposed to leave at 5:40. We thought it started at 7. That's a long time, but now we know 6 o'clock sharp. We got to be in our seats at the CTC, beer in hand, to honor Flesherton, Ontario's finest. We'll all do it at the Glebe Central Pub. We'll see you there next week, but you can always go there. Make sure you let them know that Locked On Senators sent you to the Glebe Central Pub. All right, it's the Postcast. Sens lose 6-3. I'm Ross Levitan with Jack Richardson for some Sen Central standouts. Now, Jack, all in all, there's a lot we can pick apart. But did you like the effort that you saw for the first game in 11 days for the Sens?
I did. I didn't have an issue with the effort from anyone, I don't think. Just maybe sharpness, like some of the shots weren't going their way, and they did battle. Like, the fact that it was tied 3-3 at the after 2, I was, it sounds really kind of sad, but I was impressed. I was impressed that they were right there. So no, effort wasn't a problem for me. However, picking one guy is a little bit tough, just because there were a couple of good performances, I think, and I'm not going to go with the obvious one. We talked about Sanderson already. I'm going to go with the guy who snapped the longest goal-scoring drought in Ottawa Senators history, Erik Brannstrom. We're talking 121 games, nearly 2 full years. It was February 20-something of 2021 that Erik Brannstrom scored last, and it was a nice shot.
It was from center ice, his last
It
goal.
was the one from center ice against David Riddick, I think, and against Calgary. So good for Brannstrom. I mean, he's having a really good year in terms of the underlying numbers. He looks good on that blue line. He's in a sheltered third pairing role. He's been good, PK, what you name it. He had a great game too, and it wasn't just that. He was moving the puck well. He stepped up when Sanderson went down. Played a lot more minutes. So big for Brannstrom. If he can bring a little bit more of that offensive game at even strength, it'll be a huge boost for the Sens team. So I'm going Brannstrom, snapping the goalless drought. That's a long streak, and even though they lost, like, the weight is off that guy's shoulders now. Like, that's a huge goal.
And he almost got a second. He had a nice little pinch in the third period. Could you imagine if he goes no goals in 121 and then scores 2 goals in a period?
Would have felt like Alex Burrows' debut for some reason. I don't know why I get those vibes. Just like when it's weird when a guy scores and they do it twice in back-to-back periods.
I wonder what he thinks of the trade now. Eh?
Oh, God.
And it works with Brannstrom because people obviously give.
Yeah. Proudest day as GM. Proudest day as GM, scored the first goal in 121 games. I do like Brannstrom. I'm still on the Brannstrom team. But it is just. Yeah, I'm the bandwagon. I call him the franchise when they traded for him. I was a big the franchise guy. So great to see him score. And I mean, if Sanderson's out for a few games, we'll see if he can elevate his game a little bit more.
Totally. And I think he deserves that opportunity. 15 minutes for Eric Brandstrom in this game. And at 5-on-5, right in the middle of the pack in terms of Corsi percentage. He's on there for the same amount of goals for and against. And yeah, just a clean game for Eric Brandstrom, but certainly snapping an 120 game drought. You got to give some stick taps to Eric Brandstrom. I'm going to go a different direction with my Send Central standout today. I'm going to go with the heart and soul of the team. And shockingly, Brady Tkachuk only played 14 minutes and 36 seconds, but he made a mark in those 3 shots, 5 hits. He had that spirited fight with Evander Kane that you look at it, and I know there's maybe some, maybe not much correlation between a fight and giving your team momentum. But I thought, again, you and I both watched the Oilers broadcast, and I thought at intermission they were terrific. Luke Gazdic, former tough guy in the NHL, he mentioned, like, hey, when it's a fight, like an Austin Watson, for example, who's up there and fighting majors in the league, it's almost just expected. He's going to fight. They're going to do their thing and on and on. But like Gazdic, he said, even when I was in the NHL, I could feel that. Like the guys that wasn't fired up. But when 2 guys who are skill players as well get into it, especially in front of the bench, that's going to jack up the team. And we saw that in New York when he did that against Jacob Trouba. And you look at it, they're down at the point, and they end up coming back and tying the game right after that fight. So I thought Brady brought some determination to this game. I had never heard of this Desharnais guy before. He's a monster, 6'7". He was controlling play.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that one of the late goals in the game, he wins his board battle against Shane Pinto, just bullies him around in the D zone. They break out, go the other way. But Brady stood up to him a couple times, and that's just kind of a fearless attitude I'll give some respect to. And a great way to set up the Sanderson goal, too. Great zone entry. That's a trick that he's added to his bag this season, where he's able to make plays off the rush with speed that might not have been there in his younger years. So I thought Brady had a pretty solid game today. And for that, he's my first Send Central standout.
Yeah, he was kind of my guy who, when you're trying to find guys who probably have the vacation legs coming off of a long trip, Tkachuk is the kind of player where sometimes it takes him a couple games to get his legs back under him, right? And I'm thinking when he held out for the contract, it took a couple weeks, but I'd say he was on the, like you mentioned, he looked like a guy who had just played last night, like it wasn't he wasn't lagging behind anything at all. I thought Joseph had really good legs. Like that whole top line I thought was really good. A couple other guys on forward I thought were a little slow, but yeah, you're right. I think as a fan, we're more in tune with the way certain plays make the team feel. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned what Gazdic was saying about, if Watson's going out and fighting, we're like, like that's not firing me up that much. But when Tkachuk does it every time, it's a big deal and it matters. And I think I generally do think the team responds to it every time Tkachuk drops the gloves.
Just like they did tonight, bringing it back even, but ultimately the Senators fall 6-3 at home to the Edmonton Oilers. Hey, 8th sellout of the season. And Bruce Garriock tweeted out that photo. Did you see it pregame? It was like 8 layers deep at the boards in the Edmonton Oilers for warm up. He's a ticket seller, right? He's one of those rare guys in the NHL where you're paying specifically. You get the schedule at the start of the year. When's McDavid in town? Zoink, better get those tickets ASAP. So I saw the one sign too the kid had, right? 2019 Christmas gift. 2020, no games. 2021 fans, 22 no fans, or 500 fans last year. Remember Drake Batherson was sitting behind the goal when the OT game winner. That's
strange
awesome.
time. Oh, just straight. Yeah. No, but that's the thing. It's McDavid and Draisaitl, like this high-powered offense, the best players in the league, their first time in Ottawa in 4 years. That's crazy, right? When you think about it. So obviously it's going to be a big pull. I love it when there's a lot of energy like that in the crowd. It's a fun game. I've been to a Sens Oilers game. I think it might have been that one in 2019 actually, or maybe the year before, but it's a fun atmosphere when that guy comes to town. And, a lot of Oilers fans, just generational thing like it is. And there's also a mix of probably people just jumping on the bandwagon a little bit, but man, you want to talk about the Oilers? That is a cup contending team, and they had a slow start to the year, but I'm looking at all 4 of the final 4 last year: Rangers, Lightning, Avs, and the Oilers. I think all four were kind of slow to start the year a little bit, and they've really picked it up, especially the Rangers too. Like that Edmonton team is no joke. They are legit, and I think we need to. The Sens having 12 days off, like this was a good game, all things considered, for Ottawa, especially when you consider this is a cup contending team that is absolutely rolling right now. So I'm happy with what. Excuse me, I'm happy with what I saw for sure from the Sens.
And I don't know how much I trust statmuse.com. Do you trust them?
I don't know. Some things are a little off about it. Depends what you're looking for, though.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at the most all-time points scored against the Ottawa Senators because Connor McDavid's already 30th and he's 25 years old and plays in a different conference.
Yeah, that's I mean he's got what they said 35 points in 22 games or something like that, 21
I've
games.
got
Like
the exact number right in front of me. In 21 games, he has 37 points.
yeah, that's stupid. That is really stupid. You know, okay, you know what's funny? So the Oilers broadcast referred a lot to that nine game winning streak they had against Ottawa in the COVID bubble. But what's funny about that year is that yeah, McDavid and Draisaitl I think got what 22 points in the 9 games or something.
Each.
At the time, I remember because that was McDavid MVP year and Matthews was having a great year too. I'll never forget Leafs fans taking McDavid's season down, being like, oh, he only gets points against the Sens, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember looking it up. Matthews had like 19 points in 9 games against Ottawa that year. It was the same thing. Everyone beat up on the Sens. And if you want to feel even more pain, if the Sens won 4 or 3 of those games against the Oilers, they were in the playoffs that year. If they just find a way to get a few more points out of those games, they pass Montreal. Just pain, but you know what? That's a wagon right there. I think the Oilers are going to win, going to make another run this year for sure.
Yeah, they're a real good team. Do you have any other Sen Central citizens or standouts you want to give presented by the Glebe Central Pub or just one in tonight's effort?
I mentioned Joseph. I thought he had his legs. I like him on that top line. He's got 4 points in 3 games now. I'm really liking what he's doing for Tkachuk and Stützle at 5-on-5. Now they did throw the lines in an absolute blender for the second half of the game. So like we saw Tkachuk with DeBrincat and Giroux, and then we saw Pinto, Batherson, Giroux. Like I don't know what was going on, but I think Kachuk's fight kind of messed up the flow of the lines a little bit just because he was out for 5 minutes. But I'll go Joseph. I liked his legs even right to the end. He had some nice rushes, and I pointed out Nick Paul. His last 10 games at some point in the week, he's got 2 points in 10 games or something like that. I think we're past it's a terrible trade. It was a good swap in my opinion because I like Joseph and he had a good game today, I thought.
Yeah, the advanced analytics would agree with you as well. 5-on-5, the Sens had 15 shot attempts for and only 7 against. So percentage-wise, best on the Ottawa Senators. I'm between two guys for my second Sen Central standout. You know what? We both kind of said our piece about Jake Sanderson already. The calm, cool demeanor he gives. He was third star in the building, but I just want to take this moment to appreciate Claude Giroux being an Ottawa Senator. Most shot attempts for of any Ottawa Senator when he was on the ice at 5-on-5. He's just a warrior out there again in the faceoff circle, dominant, third in the National Hockey League, 55% in this game. He kills penalties. He plays on the power play, 3 shots, scores a goal, 5th straight game with a tuck, and the road to 1,000 points continues for Claude Giroux. So just wild that he's an Ottawa Senator, and thank God he didn't just sign a 1-year deal. Seems like he's really in it for the long haul, and we can make sure he's got better success going forward. But love what he brings to this team.
It's awesome, and I think a perfect example is Oilers go up 3-1 on that just ridiculous play from McDavid, and the building's buzzing from it, and before the camera can even cut back, Giroux ties it. Right, I think it's kind of indicative of like his presence just kind of, I don't know how the next 2 years of his deal are going to pan out. I don't know what the Sens core is going to do in the next 2 years, but having him there just kind of elevates their culture. I think, and to me, that's what's most important. It's the intangibles he's bringing off the ice too. But yeah, like a 5-game goal streak, he's just rock star. Like, I don't know how to, I obviously saw that goal in Toronto, like that really nice one. And it was just right in front of me. It's like, this guy is just, he's special. He's special. And five, I think he was 12 games without a goal before that, before the streak. So he was a little cold in the goal department, but he's now, I think, tied for the team leader, one behind Stützle. So yeah, he's everything is advertised, a bargain.
A bargain. And hopefully he can continue that streak to 6 games when the Ottawa Senators take on the other Alberta squad, the Calgary Flames. Monday, we're going to have a podcast for you Monday, Locked On Senators. Tomorrow, just sit back and enjoy the Super Bowl. Jack and I are going to stick around for some Postcast After Dark. So if you're listening to this and you want some bonus content, head over to the Locked On Senators YouTube page, subscribe, and make sure that you tune in for the Postcast After Dark. And if you don't or haven't been yet to the Postcast live after each and every Ottawa Senators game, make sure you get there. The chat has been absolutely fantastic as it is. If you're in the chat right now, stick around. We'll be back in a couple minutes. We're wrapping up a 6-3 Ottawa Senators loss where there's more questions than answers, especially when it comes to who is going to play goal for the rest of this 10-game in 19-day stretch to wrap up February. For Jack Richardson, who you can follow on Twitter at Jack Richardson, I'm Ross Levitan, and this has been the Postcast after a 6-3 Senators loss to the Edmonton Oilers. All right, Postcast After Dark, Jack. Tough result, and I feel like we've said that so often. I feel like we've been accustomed to losing here, but now we've lost more than just 2 points. It's the goaltending services of Anton Forsberg, and not to speculate, Pilsey's finest quote, "I am not a doctor." But if he's out for an extended period of time, how the heck do you go out on the goalie market? Do you have to pull the trigger? Do you have to get an NHL body in the lineup? Or is it conceivable that Monday night we could have Mads Søgaard being backed up by Kevin Mandolese at the NHL level?
Oh, man, it's so tough, right? And I first of all, I'm going to get ahead of this. I know that people out there are going to be like, "Oh, we should have hung on to Hellberg." No, you shouldn't have. Okay,
no.
You don't plan on having your goalies go out at the same time. Okay, the injuries happen. Now, obviously, it'd be nice to still have him. There might be a goalie in the next couple of days on waivers. Who knows? It happens, but I feel like it's been happening less and less as teams are more comfortable with their what they've got. I don't mind throwing Søgaard in for a game or two and just running with the goalies that you have, because let's be real, like they're what now 9 points out of a playoff spot still with a couple games in hand. Like it's an absolute long shot. You got to go on a heater to get in. But is 9 points out competitive hockey at the trade deadline? Because you're looking at the trade deadline, which is what, 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away. So yeah. That's the part that I don't understand. I wouldn't go out on the market. I would go a couple games here with the other two goalies, but then you're handicapping Belleville a little bit too. So I don't know.
Belleville's a complete disaster.
Yeah, well, I mean, sucks for David Bell, an interim coach in the AHL, which you don't really see very often, I guess, eh? Or is he full? Is he interim tag? I don't even remember
for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to help.
That's a lost cause down there. They lost 3-2 today. They're 0-3 under the new coach.
It's looking good. I don't know what's going on with that. That was an absolute. Let's throw it under the news cycle, and hope it gets lost in the shuffle when we don't play a game for 2 weeks. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I don't know if the story's done per se, but we just find like there's nothing new to report. Everyone kind of said their piece, and we'll see. We'll see what happens next. But I think everyone's just hoping that the next news we hear is new owners come in and we kind of like change the expectation around here. Because right now it's just like it's the worst possible situation and what you're scared of when you do a full rebuild. You just become losers. Like you can win 4 games in a row, but then the problem is, and we'll see how they bounce back this time, but the problem is the Senators over this stretch, whenever they win a few games and you start to get your hopes up, they never lose one and then go back and win at least 2 more in a row. It's never like a 5-6 or a 6-7 or 8. Like once they lose games, then the ball just gets rolling that way, and whatever ground they've made up completely disintegrates, and they're back at the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, I feel like this is the epitome of a 500 hockey team, and they are now, right? They're 24-3 or something like that's what happens, I think, right? And Yeah, it's an improvement on what we've seen because this team was struggling for ever to find any kind of consistency after a terrible month. Now, you look at the Eastern Conference standings, they're third last in the conference because every other team is also competitive except for Columbus and Montreal. So that's a problem too, right? You could look at a scenario here where, okay, so we were talking about this, and I remember being on all the postcasts when in November when they were getting shelled on all those games too, and the discussion was, okay, what do you do with the pending UFAs or whatever? Like, is this team selling or buying? And the fact that we're now 2.5, 3 weeks out of the trade deadline, and I still don't know what they should do because,
Come on, they're
like,
not buying.
well, not buying, but I mean, you can. I think there's three scenarios, right? You can sell hard, you can just kind of get a fifth and a sixth round pick here and there, or you can just stay stagnant. And they don't have a piece where I'm like, okay, yeah, let's sell that guy and we're gonna be better tomorrow or better in the fall for getting a fifth round pick for Travis Hamonic. That doesn't do anything to me. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I want the youth in the lineup. I want them to play all the kids and stuff like that and get JBD and Lassie Thompson in the lineup at the same time. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think a fifth round pick or a fourth or whatever you get for Hamonic is worth that in the short term. Like, just keep him here. Like, I'm not gonna lose hair over losing Hamonic over nothing.
Yeah, same can be
That's
said.
one example.
Trying to get an asset or send an asset with Nikita Zaitsev. I think you and I are both on the same side of that argument, which doesn't make for great postcast material of arguing or debating it. But
Well,
just,
I will say with the Zaitsev thing, I like getting rid of the full deal.
right.
Just the cap space, like that's DeBrincat money right there. Like, then if you get for the 4.5 off the books, no matter how you have to do it, then you're looking at, okay, we have enough space to sign everyone and not get rid of anyone else that we really like. Because when you look at it, yeah, Zaitsev came back from Belleville. Okay, he had a great, not great, but like they were winning when he was in the lineup, which was better for his standards, and he was playing okay, not a nuisance. But you look at it now when they're fully healthy, which they were tonight going in. You've got a $4.5 million defenseman sitting in the press box. That's not good. That can't happen. So a second might be what it costs to get rid of him. I thought that's what it was going to be in the summer anyway, and they didn't get around to doing it.
Right. So why didn't they do it then? It almost feels like at this point it's a little too late, right? If you're going to make that move and actually have time or make a move for a defenseman when it mattered, but now they're 10 points out. Like, who cares?
See, but I would argue that if they didn't have a trade for another defenseman lined up, you didn't need to technically get rid of Zaitsev that quickly. Whereas this summer they need that cap space, which is uncharted territory for this management group in general. Just over the last, by the way, we're approaching 7 years as GM for Pierre Dorion. I don't know if I've rung that bell enough lately, but 7 years and one playoff appearance just to.
And the playoff appearance in the first year.
That's a
little bit of what we call riding coattails of the guy who's there before you.
A little bit, and
Can you name in order? There's this, no, maybe not in order, because there's more GMs who are longer term than Pierre Dorion than there are head coaches with DJ Smith, which kind of makes sense. There's a lot less for head coach. They're more interchangeable than a GM. But can you name the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Can you name the 8 GMs who have been with their team longer than Pierre Dorion?
Well, I know that he's the longest. Oh no, I'm thinking coaches. Okay, so I've got 2 off the bat. I know David Poile in Nashville.
Number 1.
Brad Treliving is up there.
He's the only GM they've ever had in Nashville, which is wild.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I know, is Brad Treliving up there, 2014 or something like that? Yep. What number is he? Can I get a?
He is number 6.
Oh, okay. I can't name off the top of my head. Like, is that's the only Canadian one though? I think. I think all the other Canadian ones have cycled GMs. Yeah.
No, one more.
Oh, Cheveldayoff. There we go. Yeah, he's been GM since they got. Okay, yeah. That's a. See, but you could take that number and be like, oh, okay, there's a lot of guys ahead of him. All of those guys ahead of him are like perennial playoff contenders.
Correct.
Through
except Nashville, I guess so. Yeah, them too.
Honestly, maybe the Jets had a little bit of a couple lean years, especially in the beginning, right? But in the last half of Cheveldayoff's tenure, like they've been one of the best teams in the West.
I'll tell you this: they've all won playoff series since the Sens.
Yeah.
Last.
So who are the other names?
Doug Armstrong.
Well, I mean, that might be ticking after that Tarasenko trade.
You know what? One that hasn't, who might deserve more heat than they're getting, is Jarmo Kekalainen, 2013. Yep. Jim Nill, 2013.
Okay.
And Brian McClellan, 14. And then, the last one's Don Sweeney with the Bruins. They've been all right, eh? I'd say so.
Yeah. You're looking at every team there except for maybe the Blue Jackets. Actually, no, the Blue Jackets is the exception, I would say. But yeah, that's ridiculous.
So what I want to get into now, kind of zooming back in to up until the trade deadline, and if you're, I guess you'll have to be watching this. This is the Postcast After Dark. But there's also another game there, the Thursday. So it goes 2 games against Detroit off, and then back on. That game, I believe, is at home, or no, it's against the Rangers. I don't know, home or away, but you got that many games up until the trade deadline. That's not an easy schedule. I think they got to go get a goalie and get a goalie right now. I don't think they can be rolling with this.
Okay, so I agree because they're screwed. The thing is, like, do you want them to sell? Like, are you okay if they kind of make a push and they finish 6 points out? They're like, they have the 12th best lottery odds. Like, to me, I'm like, I want a top 10 pick or nothing. Like, you know what I mean? I would rather that's my stance. I want to see competitive hockey till the end. I think that's completely fair to say as a fan. Whatever guy you pick isn't going to be on this team for another 3 years. So prospects are fun. I love prospects. But I've been doing prospects for 5 years with this team, and it's time to, this core is going to age out before this player is impactful in the lineup. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, Brady Tkachuk's never played a playoff game. It doesn't get more indicting.
Thomas Chabot's never played a playoff game, and he's 26 years old. Like, it's ridiculous when you think about it at a so you gotta, I don't know, man. Like, I don't want to tank necessarily. They're too good to be in the Bedard sweepstakes, so it doesn't matter at this point to me.
What do you do in terms of getting an NHL goalie right now? Like, I'm looking, and I don't know who's available, but you can't have an NHL tandem for 3 weeks of Mando and Sogard.
Yeah,
you just knowing the team's for sale. Like, I get it, 2 goalies being out, it's something, but you think an owner's going to come in and be like, this is acceptable? There's zero chance. They have a combined 3 NHL games.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's not a.
The Senators' 2 goalies as of today have a combined 3 NHL starts. Most starters get that in a week.
You know what's funny? And we've been pushing the youth movement for forever. Like, this is one way to do it. Man, I don't know. Like, there's probably not a team that's in a hunt for a playoff spot willing to dish out a goalie right now, right? Even if it's a backup or even a third string. So you're looking waiver wire, you're looking free agents who haven't been signed maybe and that are still working out. Like, I don't know. It's not the NFL. You don't get guys who've been sitting around all year and just to come in and play. So at the same time, though, you would know, because it's a goalie friendly show, goalies can get hot. And not that I'm saying Sogard's going to lead them to the playoffs right now. I just mean you get a guy, or you get someone who you're comfortable with in your organization. I mean, look at Logan Thompson. He just went down with an injury too, and he's out for long-term for Vegas. So that's something too. But he was playing at Brock University a couple of years ago, and now he's a star goal. He's an all-star this year. So it comes out of absolutely nowhere sometimes. So maybe there's a guy playing for the GGs or the Ravens in Ottawa that can step in and lead them here. I don't know.
People in the chat, the Mr. New Guy 87, Arizona will trade Vejmelka. I mean, that's a swing, but you'd have to give up to get, and then
that's a first round pick. Would you trade the 2024 first round pick for Vejmelka right now? 2024, not this one. Would you trade 2024?
I don't know.
It's the tough, like, I wouldn't. That would be. I would if I was talking about Chychrun to the Coyotes for however long we think they have, I would make them throw Vejmelka in and then get serious about, like, okay, I will give you multiple first round picks for these 2 guys. Like, would you trade?
I
Let's say
no,
they're
I know they're bad. I know they're bad, but Vejmelka's got a career 88 games under his belt and like a 904 save percentage. Like I know he's on a bad
yeah.
team, but like, and it's a great contract, and he has stood on his head at times. But like, I'm not giving up a first round pick unless it's one of like the dudes, and there's not many dudes. There's
Well,
like
and you're not going to get any dude
no,
on a
no,
trade, right? Yeah, that doesn't happen.
right. That's why goaltending is. I mean, it's the most fickle position in the sport, but it's also the most important one.
I mean, ideal scenario here for all Sens fans and for no Coyotes fans is let's trade. Let's get Chikrin and Vejmelka out of Arizona. And by the way, every single NHL fan base is talking about doing this. I'm seeing it everywhere. It's Chikrin and Vejmelka, but also as Sens, let's give them Zaitsev, a second, and a first, and that's what we want to do.
How about Shabbat?
Are we? When do we talk about that?
No, 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 no.
But no, I'm
If it's in a
serious.
different deal and then it gets flipped or whatever, like obviously, like think about it.
Look, I'm not talking about for Chikrin. I'm saying
I am.
right, but when is that actually like a discussion? Because look, I love Shabbat. He's like my favorite player when I was, when he came in the league. Like I was beating the Shabbat drum when he was in the World Juniors. I'm like, that was
Only MVP for a defenseman ever in the World Junior.
and the World Junior MVP was the year the Sens went to the conference final. And then I was that whole summer. I'm like, oh my god, you're adding Thomas Shabbat to this group, like whatever. The fact is, he has not been good this year, and I think this is the first case we're having of like, are we gonna turning on the core pieces a little bit? You know what I mean? Like it happens with every fan base. It's sports. It always happens. He's the first guy where we need more from him, and today was a huge example of that, I think. And I don't know, man. I mean, that would be hey, new GM comes in, set the tone. I don't know. That'd be crazy though.
It would be crazy, and it's unfortunate because he's been
It
run into the
sucks.
ground over the last
Oh,
half decade. Run into the ground. Like it would be no fault of his own if it doesn't work out here.
yeah.
The way he's been treated and just put into a role that I don't think anyone in the NHL should be expected to take on. The most single player time on ice per game over the last 5 years is Thomas Chabot on average. Nobody's played more than him on average.
And I'll take it further.
Yeah.
You could be like, oh, it's because he is all the power play time. And yeah, he plays a lot of power play. I think I haven't checked now, but at some point during the year, in January at least, he was leading the NHL in even strength time on ice per game. And he had like 15 even strength points as an offensive defenseman. Like it starts with your D sometimes. And I could live with the lack of defending sometimes, right? Because we did it for years with Carlson. You take the good with the bad. But when the offense isn't there, what's he bringing to the table? And it's really sad that this is a discussion, but we have to talk about it because it's a problem, man. Like he was noticeably bad today. And
so he's noticeably bad today. I agree. Not having a great year overall. But he would probably tell you the same thing. And it has to be said, a lot of the $64 million he's owed is still coming his way. And
like a lot.
Like he goes from he's making $4 million this year, which
and
is
I think that's been his salary for the last 3 years, right? 4 million base.
774. So that means
this year's 4. It's so weird.
his lockout protection, if there was going to be a lockout, it was going to be this year.
Okay.
So hey, no signing bonus money in this deal. And again, I feel like I'm gonna have to wash my mouth out after this conversation, at least for now. But it is worth noting that next year his salary jumps up to 8 million. Then it goes 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, 8 million, and a modified no trade clause kicks in 2 seasons from now. So just something to keep in mind.
Look, it's something to keep in mind next season too. Excuse me, next season when Sanderson needs a new deal. Oh.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's not the only guy whose money jumps up, right? That's the classic Sens. They signed a lot of these big tickets, especially the early ones. And then they're like, okay, well, you know what? We'll deal with the salary. We'll kick it down the road a little bit. Let's look total salary. In 2 years from now, Brady's making 10.5. Shabbat's making 10. Norris is making 9.5. That's real money.
I think
So
Drake's is backloaded too. I think.
Drake is up to 5.4, and then it jumps again to 6.5 the following year.
Okay.
Okay, so
What
here
about?
we go. Then Timmy's jump. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
there we
that's a
go.
long way down the line. We're getting a little bogged down, I think, with numbers, but not next year, not the year after, but the following year. You're paying 10.5 for Brady, 9 million for Timmy, 6.5 for Batherson, 10 million for Shabbat, and 9.5 for Norris. Like, that's all way above what their cap
Cap
hit.
it. Yeah.
It's also the final year of Claude Giroux, which dives down 1.5. So anyway, nothing like listing off numbers. It's a bit deep, but it is now something we used to laugh, Billsy and I, that it was like the cap friendly page was just all red and just looking at free agents 1 year down the road. But now they're in a situation where they've committed to so many guys. You're starting to think 1-2 years down the road and how this is all going to work out, not only in cap hit, but we know that the books need to be balanced to an extent in Ottawa for now, because I think what's holding everyone on right now is the pending ownership change and
Yeah.
how quickly changes will come, because there's no chance that new ownership comes in to a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 6 going on 7 seasons and are going to be like, oh yeah, it's all good. Let's start from scratch. No, they're going to be like, look, this chord's here. Like, we're adding. We have to.
And
Point the market's going to be like, okay, well, we're just mediocre. We're the Buffalo Sabres.
yeah, I'll get my tinfoil hat on here too, because it's not a coincidence that every single one of these long-term deals are backloaded starting in a year or next season, right? And it's not a coincidence that they're looking to sell now. However, I don't think Eugene Melnick's passing was obviously part of the plan, but I do think that when they signed all these deals, I remember looking, especially at the Shabbat one, because that's the most drastically backloaded one, I think, right? And for the salaries to only be making half of that in base salary this year, and then to jump up 6 million, that's crazy. So I think that they were planning, obviously, on selling the team around now. The thing is, that's a lot of dollars to be dishing out to a team that's not making the playoffs. So I don't know if it's a situation where the new owner would come in and hire a GM who analyzes the core in Ottawa, because I think generally in league circles you look at this core nucleus they've got assembled, and Shabbat's included in that, and any new GM would jump at it and be like, I want to be the GM of this team, because the hard stuff is done, right? You've torn it down and rebuilt it. So, but maybe they come in and just take a sledgehammer. I don't know. Like it's been 6 years now without playoffs.
Young Zachary saying, I hope Dorian knows Russian, I guess, thinking that he might not get another NHL job right away. That's what I was chuckling at there, not you. But no, that's fair. I think it all starts with having a better chain of command. I think Pierre Dorion, for all intents and purposes, I think he is a good scout and talent evaluator to an extent. But I think that managing up, which we know a GM has to do, I don't know if that's a strength of his. And PR Dorion, we've called him in the past, where
Yep.
he'll kind of say whatever comes into his mind, which is great when things are going well. Like, we're gonna look back, Jack, and I know you saw Pierre Dorion on this show. Like, we got him at the highest of highs. He had just signed Tim Stützle. It was like the end of the summer, entering training camp. Like,
Yep.
he was floating that day, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll come on all the time." Like, we haven't heard from him since. All good.
Yep. All right,
But
Pierre. Yeah.
it's interesting, and what I come down to a chain of command. Look at all these great organizations. They have a president of hockey operations and then a GM. And remember, there was that week or two where it's like they're going to get one, and then they settled to have like Pierre Maguire just be a shadow, like lurking in the background. That was the weirdest timeline. But like, get Alfie in as president of hockey ops and let him do his thing. If nothing else, they're going to play a puck possession, fun type of hockey that is still physical, because we know Alfie loves physical hockey and getting in on the forecheck and
Yeah.
being a pain in the ass to play against. But like, look what I know. Joe Sakic's a little bit different. He is the hands-on GM, but like Joe Sakic in Colorado moved up to be the hockey ops. And I think it was a hot lunch. You mentioning that Burnaby Joe, like that list of GMs, he would have been on there, but he was moved to. So the list I was looking at, Chris McFarland is the GM in Colorado. But I think that they need that stability at the top of the command chain in a director of hockey ops, president of hockey ops situation, and then just have like, I think Dorion would be a fine GM in that circumstance, but you don't hold on to a guy in this situation. I think it really is. It's unfortunate to say because there are a lot of good pieces, but it's like
Yeah.
it's just like what I was kind of like smiling to myself today, thinking it's like I hate being the guy who's on other people about their job or like being like you got like you're out
Right.
that thing like it sucks doing that, but at the same time you look around and you look at all the other teams in the league and like how many guys have been fired for so much less?
It's ridiculous. And it's not even you can nitpick trades, you can nitpick, asset management from Dorian, like the actual GM side of things. But the other thing that we never see and just every hockey fan I think takes for granted, and you mentioned it earlier a little bit, it's the managing of people. And this whole Troy Mann situation to me it just screams like how unprofessional this regime, like the management group in Ottawa, however long has been. It's just been a gong show from the beginning of when they said they were going to tear it down until now. And unfortunately for Pierre Dorion, it falls to him because for years, and I think rightfully so, based on what we know, I think we pointed to Eugene Melnick being like, okay, he ran it in a certain way. But now Mr. Melnick is not in the fold anymore, and Dorion's still there, and it's still kind of happening a little bit. So that's a problem. And it's not even, you can just look at on ice stuff, and you're right. How much less have people been fired for? Much, much less. I mean, I think Edmonton's been through like 3 general managers in the last 3 years or whatever the hell, or you know what I mean? Like Ken Holland is the newest one, but they had Peter Chiarelli for not very long, and they didn't let it slide because the Oilers were going through a terrible stretch of being terrible, right? But the Sens are getting to that point. 6 years plus is not, it's not an average playoff drought. This is the longest one in franchise history. And
it's the whole organization, dude. Like I know
exactly.
that Belleville was in first place. Like I get it, the year where COVID came, but
Yeah.
outside of that, like there's been more years. Like you can say the COVID year there was no playoffs. Not like they were a contending team. They were pretty like meh that COVID year, and then they lose in 2 games. They were facing elimination their first home game. Say what you want, but they didn't put themselves in a position where they were going to be a top 2 team. And you have to spend in the AHL. That's why the Marlies and the Laval Rocket are always up near the top or at least battling because they're able to buy themselves good AHL players. It's just unfortunate all around, but it feels like it's kind of like off the rails, but it's still like there's still a lot of pieces that I really like. So
Yeah.
we're also in like the longest stretch where Pierre Dorion hasn't made a move. And that's almost eerie in its own way because he's trigger happy. He loves making trades. He has to be number 1 of all GMs in most moves made since whatever date he took. Well, whatever date he made the Brassard for Zibanejad, his first trade. Second, I guess, because he traded up a 3rd round pick to move up to get Logan Brown when Jacob Chikrin was right there. And then we wouldn't even be having this.
And Charlie McAvoy.
Yeah, that was the year after Shabbat too. Imagine having a guy like Sanderson, but immediately after being able to come up instead. I mean, CeCe was drafted 2 years before in the first round, and I mean he was okay out there today. But it's a wild time right now, Jack, and I think that we're gonna get answers sooner than later to ownership, and some other moves might follow because you could see if you're a new owner coming in, you're using this last 25 games to get a complete sense of what's going on. I wouldn't even be surprised if the new owners come in and if there's a connection. Like I know that I've heard like Trevor Daley's name is connected with one. Like for example, and Trevor Daley might not be the guy, but whoever is like the hockey player with the group that comes in, if it's Alfie or whatever, like I wouldn't be surprised if they put like even if it's Alfie, even if Alfie has no long-term interest in being an NHL head coach, if they just put like one of their own guys behind the bench just to be like I'm like almost like a mole, a spy, or just be like boots on the ground. How are they every day in and out? And maybe if it's Alfie, coach the rest of the year and then become president of hockey ops. Then you have as much info and about the current players, or maybe the new management or new ownership. They've been watching all year. They've known they've been in the mix. Whoever wins this, maybe they come in and just start a fire sale right away. All the guys they don't like. That would be coming in with a bang. I have no idea. And I think that's what keeps dramatic the rest of this season for the Sens.
Yeah, and it feels weird, right? Because you want to just look at the on ice stuff, and the players are going to be like, oh yeah, it doesn't bother us. We don't think about it, but they're lying. Of course they do. Okay. Actually, I want to go back to that. I don't think it was a fake call. And I
No?
know that, so, like, because
Yeah,
obviously when
you can leave the call screen when you're on the phone. It was his home page though when he put it
yeah,
to his
but even when, like, if you get called, maybe, like, I'm not defending him, but everyone was like, oh, fake call. But like, if you've got one of those iPhones, it'll be like, you could be on your home page and it'll just be that green little dot at the top left or whatever.
Yep.
That could have been it. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because that was a great day for Sens fans. I'm not.
We should have asked him. He was in such a good mood the day we had Timmy on. We should have asked him about that.
Oh, that would have put him on his heels too, I think.
And if I had the photo too, and I could have brought it up on the screen,
that would have been so good. Because when you go in with like to that video, and for those who are wondering what we're discussing, it's like when the Sens traded for DeBrincat, they did a little 1-minute breakaway thing of Dorion completing the trade call with Kyle Davidson, the Chicago GM. And it was when you go in with the context of it was a fake call, and then you watch it again, you're like, wow, this is really poor execution from Dorion, because he's just like, oh, okay, thanks, Kyle. Yeah. And who do you want that? Oh, okay. Yeah. Email. Okay. Yeah. Cool. It's just like, no, it doesn't sound like a conversation.
Yeah. Classic. You're like trying to not make eye contact with someone you've known in a long time.
Yeah.
Walk by, look busy on the phone or whatever, and you just pull it up. Yep. Sounds good. Oh, what are we having for dinner? Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and look, I'll read even further into it. So I mentioned like the managing people thing, right? And how I personally, I know I'm a young guy. I haven't entered the world of like working and everything. I think that if you can't manage people, it'll trickle down and, it'll be strange. So anyway, in that video, Dorion then goes up to Trent Mann, his then newly appointed assistant GM, and who at the time, though, maybe he wasn't promoted yet. He might have been, but
yeah, he was.
Okay, so but at the
Like
time, the whole year the whole year he had been working as chief amateur scout, whatever. So this draft in the draft room there where they were goes up to Trent and it says, "Sorry about pick 7," and it's like, you don't need to apologize. You're the boss. Make the call. Like, obviously, it's joking and like it was a good time. Like, it's obviously a great move for the team, but like, you shouldn't have to apologize to your assistant GM for that. I don't know. To me, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And like, maybe I'm putting the tinfoil hat on here again, but it's just that vibe has been around this team for too long, I think.
The Postcast is all about the tinfoil hat. The bottom line, I think, DJ, would you agree that things just haven't been good enough?
Yes. Ha ha ha. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. They just haven't been good enough, Jack. I mean, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. You got to start thinking what's going on. And that's why we're having these wild, wacky discussions that at the start of the year, if you had said that we'd even be entertaining the thought of not having Thomas Chabot be a part of the future of this team, I think you'd be like, what? What went wrong? Well, just about everything. And now we think injury is going to add on to that.
Yeah. So, okay. Final thing on Chabot. And just so I think we've talked a lot about this just all year because it hasn't been one game, like we said, right? It's been a bad stretch for Chabot this season. So do you think a new coach, if like his worst hockey has been under DJ Smith and it's been most of his hockey, right? But a new coach could rejuvenate him. I just feel like you're almost at a point where it's too far gone. And one bad season you can turn it around right after, but look at every super, top defenseman in the league who's been paid like one and then kind of trails off a little bit. I'm thinking like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Carlson until before this season, because it's ridiculous this year at Carlson. But
sidebar, I really hope he gets traded to Edmonton. That would be.
Did you see that? It was mid-game. Chris Johnson or
must-watch TV every night.
The idea that could work.
Power play might put like a Team Canada World Junior power play percentage to shame.
Oh man, that would be just like, but not even like even strength. He's the best even strength player in the league right now, and you're talking about adding that to the best player we've seen in our lifetime since Wayne Gretzky. Like what? It would be you're adding Bobby Orr to Wayne Gretzky's hockey team. That's what it is, because Erik Karlsson. Exactly. Yeah, like because Erik Karlsson is the best defenseman of the past decade. Makar is probably going to pass him, or maybe even not, based on what Karlsson's doing right now. But Erik Karlsson's like first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. He's going to win another Norris Trophy this year, probably. Like that good, and you're adding him to
Hopefully,
the other best player.
allegedly, he has to waive his no trade clause to go to Edmonton and stay there for 5 years. So,
well, that's how you're going to know. Like if you're
playing with McDavid, waiving your no trade clause for Edmonton.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I know Carlson loves the West Coast lifestyle there, but if he really wants to win, you're waiving it to play with McDavid for the next however long. Like, wow, that'd be special.
It's one of those. It's almost like, not to steal an example, recent example from basketball. Not that Edmonton is Brooklyn by any chance, but it's one of those where if McDavid ends up leaving, McDavid would be Kyrie, not with what's around the trade, but in being traded. And then Carlson would be Durant and be traded the next day because he'd just be like, get me right now. But that's obviously a way down deep hypothetical. But imagine the Oilers make the playoffs this year with Carlson and CeCe as their top 2 right defensemen.
My head would be in shambles. I would be. Oh, should have just protected my thought. Should have protected my thought in 2017. Oh, I wonder who made that choice. Pierre Dorion.
Yeah, lots not to like about what he's done. And we'll see what's next, though. Whatever's next is going to draw me the heck in. And will it be before March 3rd? Do you know what you're doing March 3rd yet, Jack?
I do not. What day of the week is it? Is it
Friday?
I'll be all ears anywhere.
Are you good for a live stream at some point?
For sure. Yeah,
Be
no
on
doubt.
the beach in Cabo, but Pilsy and I are both locking in that Friday morning. We're Pacific time, so the deadline's at 1 p.m.
Perfect.
Like the whole day after.
There you go.
We're going live stream probably for the hour leading up to the deadline, I think. So you can jump on whenever
Sounds
you
good.
want. We'll obviously put out videos whenever the Sens do anything. But live stream leading up to the deadline will break everything down. And could you imagine if the Senators have new ownership by the deadline? Do you think they will? Not trivia, but that's the question I want to leave this after dark with. And I want to hear the chat as well.
I'll say yes. You know what? Why not? I think it feels like it's heating up, but there's so many groups. That's the thing. It feels like there's 15 groups.
But at some point, you're just like, hey, this is the price. Can anyone reach this?
Yeah. I mean, is it in the team's best interest to sell before or after the deadline? There's another question. I don't know if it would be. I'd say after, right? Because you don't want to handcuff, but at the same time, you're handcuffing Dorion anyway because you can't. I wonder what's actually stopping him from doing anything. Like he could technically just go out and trade whoever the fuck he wants right now. Pardon my French.
He needs, I think, the board. And from what I'm hearing too, and not that I'm trying to make it sound like an insider, but just from what I've seen floated around on social media, I think the Melnyk estate wants to keep at least a small percentage.
Right. That'd be smart.
It's in their best interest to hand off the reins sooner rather than later, because I mean, literal analogy: if you don't hand over the reins right now, it's veering not the right way. You need somebody to get a firm grasp on that.
Yeah.
I'll say yes too, though. I mean, I'm also hearing that I mean the bidding's going to continue on the 25th of February, so I don't think we can expect anything before March. But they've been saying all along early March, right? And March 3rd's pretty early in March. I'm curious, man. Imagine that's how we start deadline day, like the night before the deadline. It's like the Sens are sold, bang.
Well, and not to relate it to the NBA, like you did there in the Kevin Durant, all that. I believe the Suns had a new owner, like officially bought the team, and then 12 hours later traded for Kevin Durant. He traded 4 first-round picks for Kevin Durant. Like, I mean, maybe Ryan Reynolds comes in and is like, all right, let's go get Erik Karlsson, bring him home.
Don't get nuts. That's nuts. Paul White, as you've been able to hear, if you've been following along this whole postcast, both Jack and I were stuck watching the Oilers broadcast, so we didn't see a question period. Paul Y saying that there's no new ownership by March 3rd because Bruce said the first cuts are February 25th. I knew something was going Feb 25th, so first cut. But I mean, once you go beyond the first cut, I mean, how much deeper do we have to go? Anyways, I am not familiar with multi-million-dollar.
It's crazy how much money is like $800 million. Like it's just it's an inconceivable amount of money. But hey, I mean, yeah.
What are your final thoughts after this one, Jack?
I don't have anything. I think if they won, I wouldn't have anything either. It would have been fun, but this was such a get your legs back game. Monday, Tuesday, that back-to-back is when I'm going to start being like, okay, let's figure out what we are. If they don't win one of those 2 games, if they've lost 3 in a row here now, then I'm talking like, let's tank for Bedard. Let's lose every single game until then. I don't know. I mean, it's such a streaky team. It's tough. I don't know. What are you thinking after a game like tonight? Like, good game, but more of the same.
Yeah, it just sucks. But like I said at the start, it just seems like whenever they do go on a bit of a run, like the last time they won 4 in a row, they lost the next 3 in a row. And then they won 2 in a row, then they lost, then they won 2, then they lost 2. It just feels like they can never bounce back and get their winning ways once they lose it. Of course, the 7-game losing streak right after the initial 4-game streak. So now that you've lost, what can you do? Can you win back-to-back games again? If they can go at home against Calgary and win, and then go to New York the next night and win, not an easy test. Islanders starting to come around too, with Horvat being a part of that. Not easy by any stretch, but then it'll get me back in the groove, going boots on the ground on Friday, February 17th, thanks to Central Pub. So, 11 games right now between now and the trade deadline. So plenty of intrigue to come. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm intrigued right now. I have no hope. Hope was gone with the delusion of the break. Games in hand.
Gotta win them. Yeah, gotta win them.
And everyone else winning games all around the league too, getting points. So it's huge mentioning. I don't count beating Montreal twice part of a winning streak, just because how bad the Habs are.
Very fair.
You gotta play the games ahead of you, and that's what they did. But right now, intrigue is how I'll leave the Postcast after dark. We appreciate everyone for joining us in the Postcast after each and every Ottawa Senators game. We'll be back on Monday with another Postcast and podcast. Might be a late Postcast. I'll let you guys know in the actual pod on Monday, but we appreciate everyone for jumping in. Win, lose, or draw, we'll be here. Jack, appreciate you, man. Plug your stuff. I know it's Jack Richardson, no A, on Twitter, and that's where people can find you.
Yeah, Twitter, writing for Dine Sports, doing highlight breakdowns over on their YouTube page. So we're a lot of Sens stuff to come, and I'm going to be putting a lot of Tim Stützle all goals by the end of the season, just highlight packs and all that stuff. So just keep an eye out for that.
All right, we'll get a Go Sens go in the chat. Why not? Just for fun, because the Sens are back, okay? It's better to have Sens hockey than not at all. How's that for a poetic end? For Jack Richardson, I'm Ross Levitan. Thank you to the Glebe Central Pub. Head there, 779 Bank Street. Let them know the Locked On Senators sent you. The Senators, 6-3 losers to the Edmonton Oilers. Connor McDavid with 3 points. Zach Hyman with 2. Leon Draisaitl with 2. It's the usual suspects doing the damage. And Ottawa is down another goalie, as a stretcher had to take Anton Forsberg out of this one. We'll have more updates as that continues on Twitter at Sens Central. You can follow me at Ross Levitan, and as we mentioned, at Jack Richardson, but let that A just float away. All right. Appreciate everyone for joining us. For Jack Richardson once again, and pray for Brandon Pillar, who is in Las Vegas as we speak for Super Bowl. All right. We'll talk Monday. Enjoy the Super Bowl tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. This is the Locked On Senators Postcast presented by the Glebe Central Pub.